They chose the right man. My uncle's voice rang through the banquet hall with the confidence of a judge delivering a final verdict. And you? He looked straight at me, lips curling into a smile that carried no warmth. You were never worthy of my niece. The applause that followed hit harder than a slap. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors while dozens of relatives raised their champagne glasses toward the stage. My younger cousin, Daniel Hart, stood beside Sophia Bennett in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, wearing the smug smile of a man who believed he had already won life. The engagement ring on Sophia's finger glittered beneath the lights. 3 years. 3 years of helping her build Bennett Design from a struggling studio into one of the fastest-growing luxury architecture firms in Harbor City. 3 years of canceled opportunities because she needed me. 3 years of believing loyalty meant something. Now every contribution had been erased with a single sentence. They're a better match. I heard it whispered behind me. Daniel's family has money. He's charming. Adrian was always too ordinary. Ordinary. I looked toward my mother. She avoided my eyes. My father didn't even bother pretending to feel guilty. Instead, he lifted his glass toward Daniel. Take good care of Sophia. The words weren't meant for me. They never were. Sophia finally stepped off the stage and walked toward me. For one brief second, I thought she might explain. Instead, she sighed. You shouldn't have come. A strange calm settled inside me. I was invited. By mistake. She folded her arms. Adrian, you know how business works. I thought I knew how trust worked. Her expression stiffened. Daniel can open doors you never could. So that's what this is? She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. I reached into my pocket and placed a worn silver key card onto the nearest table. The master access card. Her eyes widened. You still had that. You never asked for it back. It belongs to the company. It belonged to the man who practically lived there. The room had grown quieter. People were watching. Good. Let them. Sophia lowered her voice. Don't embarrass yourself. A laugh escaped before I could stop it. Myself. She leaned closer. I was trying to let you leave with dignity. Dignity? The word tasted bitter. You announced your engagement in front of everyone before telling me we were over. We hadn't been together for months. We hadn't spoken because you kept saying you were busy. She looked away. Not denial. Avoidance. Daniel wrapped an arm around her waist before flashing me a victorious grin. Come on, Adrian. He spoke as though comforting a child. Life isn't fair. No. I nodded slowly. It isn't. He extended a business card toward me. My father's construction group needs warehouse supervisors. I could recommend you. Laughter erupted from several tables. Someone even clapped. Warehouse supervisor. The man who had negotiated half of Bennett Design's major contracts. The man who had spent sleepless nights rewriting proposals that Daniel had once mocked because they were boring. My father finally spoke. You should thank him. I stared. I'm serious. His face remained perfectly calm. Daniel is offering help. I don't need charity. You'll need something. My mother finally found her voice. Adrian, don't be stubborn. There it was. The same sentence I'd heard since childhood. Give your toys to your cousin. Let him take the bigger room. Share your inheritance later. He's family. Today family had chosen again. Just not me. I picked up Daniel's business card. He smiled wider. Then I folded it once. Twice. 3 times. Placed it back into his breast pocket. I hope you enjoy your victory. He chuckled. I will. I nodded. I believe you. Without another word, I walked toward the exit. No shouting. No accusations. No dramatic speech. Just footsteps echoing across expensive marble. Behind me someone whispered, He's running away. No. For the first time in years. I was leaving. Outside, rain soaked the city. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. This is Adrian. A calm female voice replied. Mr. Hale? Yes. I apologize for contacting you without notice. I think you've got the wrong person. I don't. A brief pause. My employer has spent 6 months trying to locate you. I frowned. Who is your employer? Another pause. Long enough to make the rain feel louder. Miss Evelyn Sterling. The name meant nothing. I'm sorry. You don't know her. No. She knows you. Cold crept in my spine. Ow! She would prefer to explain in person. I'm not interested. You may be after hearing this. Silence. Then, Mr. Hale, Miss Sterling recently acquired 51% of Bennett Design. My fingers tightened around the phone. What? The acquisition becomes public tomorrow morning. The city traffic blurred around me. Why are you telling me? Because Miss Sterling instructed us to deliver a message before the announcement. What message? The woman spoke each word carefully. Your family celebrated too early. The line went dead. I stood in the rain, staring at the dark screen. Behind the banquet hall windows, fireworks exploded above the engagement celebration. Inside, they believed they'd chosen the winning groom. None of them knew that by tomorrow morning, the company they had sacrificed me for would belong to someone else. And somehow, that mysterious billionaire already knew my name. The next morning, Harbor City woke to chaos. I didn't. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. 37 missed calls, 21 messages, most of them from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in months. I ignored everyone. Instead, I made coffee in the tiny apartment I'd moved into after quietly leaving Sophia's condo 2 months earlier. The television in the corner interrupted the silence. Breaking news. The anchor wore the kind of expression reserved for corporate earthquakes. Sterling Capital has officially completed its surprise acquisition of controlling shares in Bennett Design. Images flashed across the screen. Sophia, Daniel, reporters, microphones, confused executives. Then one name appeared in bold letters. Evelyn Sterling. The camera shifted to a woman stepping out of a black sedan. She couldn't have been older than 30. Simple white suit. No flashy jewelry. No unnecessary smile. Yet every executive around her unconsciously stepped aside. Power rarely needed to announce itself. It simply arrived. My phone rang again. Mother. This time I answered. Hello. Adrian. Her voice trembled. Did you know? Know what? About this Sterling woman. I saw the news. You have to come. Why? Something strange happened. I remained silent. Mother hesitated. She asked for you. That finally got my attention. What do you mean? She walked into the company this morning. And the first question she asked was, another pause. Where is Adrian Hale? I looked out the window. Rain clouds still covered the skyline. I don't understand. Neither do we. Of course they didn't. Yesterday, I had been disposable. Today someone important knew my name. The difference terrified them. I'll think about it. Please. Her voice had changed. Less commanding. More pleading. We may need your help. I almost laughed. Yesterday, they had offered me charity. Today they wanted assistance. Funny how quickly fortunes shifted. I'll call you later. I hung up before she could continue. An hour later, another call arrived. Unknown number again. I already knew who it was. Mr. Hale. The same comm assistant. Miss Sterling has prepared transportation. I haven't agreed. She anticipated that. What if I refuse? Then she'll continue waiting. Waiting? She said she's waited long enough already. The sentence lingered. How could someone I'd never met speak as though our lives had crossed years ago? Against my better judgment, I agreed. A black luxury sedan arrived 20 minutes later. The driver said almost nothing. Downtown Harbor City's financial district stretched toward the clouds before the car finally stopped beneath Sterling Tower. The building itself looked less like an office and more like a declaration. Inside, employees moved with quiet precision. No panic, no wasted motion. I was escorted to the top floor. The elevator doors opened. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. A single woman stood with her back toward me. White suit, dark hair, hands resting lightly behind her. She didn't turn immediately. I watched the engagement live stream. Her voice was softer than I expected. I'm sorry. I frowned. You don't even know me. She finally faced me. Calm gray eyes. No pity. Only certainty. I know enough. I don't. She smiled faintly. That's fair. She walked to the desk and slid a thick folder toward me. Everything Bennett Design accomplished over the last 3 years. I opened it. Every contract, every negotiation, internal emails, performance reports, highlighted passages. One sentence appeared repeatedly. Prepared by Adrian Hale. Recommended by Adrian Hale. Resolved by Adrian Hale. Another page showed executive bonuses. Daniel's name appeared beside projects he had never touched. Sophia's signature approved every payment. They took your work, Evelyn said quietly. I already knew. They also altered internal records. I froze. What? She handed me another document. My own resignation letter. Only, I had never written it. Someone had forged my signature. According to company records, I had voluntarily surrendered my shares in future profit participation. My heartbeat slowed, not from fear, from clarity. Yesterday had not simply been betrayal. It had been preparation. They had planned my disappearance long before the engagement. Evelyn watched my expression without interrupting. Finally, I asked the question that had haunted me since yesterday. Why are you helping me? She looked directly into my eyes. Because 10 years ago, she stopped herself. A rare hesitation. No. She shook her head gently. You deserve the truth. She opened a smaller envelope. Inside lay an old photograph. I stared. A teenage boy, wearing a volunteer badge, helping an elderly woman after a traffic accident. The boy's face was unmistakably mine. I looked up. I barely remember this. You shouldn't. Her voice almost broke. But I do. She inhaled slowly. The woman whose life you saved that day. She placed another photograph beside the first. An elegant elderly woman smiling beside Evelyn. Was my grandmother. Before I could process the revelation, the office doors burst open. A furious voice echoed through the room. Adrian. Daniel stormed inside, followed closely by Sophia. Both of them looked nothing like the confident couple from yesterday. Their victory had already begun to crack, and they had come for the one person they had thrown away. Daniel slammed the office door so hard the glass walls trembled. You're behind this. His finger pointed straight at my chest. Yesterday, he had looked at me as though I were invisible. Today, he looked at me as though I had become dangerous. I remained seated. No. His jaw tightened. Don't lie. Sophia stepped forward before he could continue. She looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and the confidence that had carried her through the engagement banquet had vanished overnight. She looked at Evelyn instead of me. Miss Sterling, if there's been some misunderstanding, Bennett Design is willing to discuss new terms. Evelyn didn't even invite them to sit. This is a private meeting. Sophia forced a smile. We're all professionals. No. Evelyn's voice stayed calm. You came here emotionally. I prefer facts. Daniel scoffed. You bought our company just to make a point? Our company? Evelyn tilted her head. Interesting choice of words. She pressed a button on the desk. A screen descended from the ceiling. Documents appeared one after another. Internal audits. Expense reports. Board resolutions. Every page carried signatures. Every page contained inconsistencies. Daniel's expression slowly changed. What is this? The reason I invested. Sophia frowned. You investigated us? I investigated the company I intended to acquire. Another file appeared. Project Phoenix. I recognized it immediately. It had been the largest luxury waterfront contract Bennett Design had ever secured. I had negotiated it. Daniel had accepted the public congratulations. Evelyn tapped the screen. The client requested Adrian Hale by name. Sophia's breathing became uneven. They did. Another email appeared. Forwarded. Edited. My name removed. Daniel's inserted instead. Silence filled the office. I stared at the screen. I had suspected they ignored my work. I had never imagined someone had systematically erased me. Daniel recovered first. So what? He shrugged. That's business. I looked at him. No. He laughed. You really think anyone cares who wrote a proposal? They care when it becomes fraud. Evelyn answered before I could. Daniel's smile disappeared. She continued. My legal team has spent 6 months verifying every transaction. Another document appeared. Unauthorized bonuses. Fake consulting invoices. Personal expenses billed to the company. Daniel swallowed. Sophia turned toward him. What are these? He avoided her eyes. You approved them. I approved summaries. You signed. I trusted you. Their voices grew sharper. Neither noticed me. Neither remembered I was still in the room. I realized something then. I didn't feel angry anymore, only tired. For years, I had imagined confronting them, demanding explanations, asking why. Now, watching them unravel before they even noticed the truth, I understood something else. People didn't need me to destroy them. They were already doing it themselves. Evelyn quietly closed the presentation. This meeting is over. Sophia looked at me, for the first time in months. Not through me, at me. Adrian. She took one uncertain step. I didn't know. I searched her face. Was she lying? No. She genuinely looked shocked, which somehow hurt even more. You signed every document. I trusted Daniel, and I trusted you. Her lips parted. No words came. Daniel suddenly grabbed my arm. You have to help. I slowly looked down at his hand. Let go. You know the operations. No. You built the systems. I resigned. That wasn't real. He realized his mistake the instant the words escaped. The room became completely silent. Sophia stared at him. What did you just say? Daniel froze. You said it wasn't real. His face lost all color. Sophia stepped backward. Daniel, she whispered. What have you done? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Evelyn calmly looked toward her legal director. Record that statement. The attorney nodded once. Daniel finally understood. His knees nearly gave way. No, too late. The truth had begun speaking on its own. An hour later, I stood alone on Sterling Tower's rooftop garden. The city stretched endlessly below. Evelyn joined me, carrying 2 cups of tea. I wasn't sure which you preferred. I'll drink anything today. A faint smile crossed her face. Understandable. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt peaceful. Finally, I asked, why didn't you tell me about your grandmother sooner? She looked toward the skyline. Because gratitude can become another kind of burden. I never expected anything. I know. She looked back at me. That's exactly why she remembered you. She handed me a worn leather wallet. Inside was an old newspaper clipping. A teenage volunteer saves elderly woman after collision. No names. No publicity. Just a blurry photograph. I never even knew someone took this. My grandmother kept it until the day she died. My chest tightened. She searched for you. For years. Evelyn nodded. You disappeared after university. I was working. You were surviving. There was no judgment in her voice. Only quiet understanding. My grandmother left me one request. She smiled sadly. If you ever find that young man, make sure life is kinder to him than people were. I looked away before she could see my eyes sting. Nobody outside my late grandfather had ever said something like that about me. Not because I deserved pity, because someone had remembered kindness. 3 days passed. I never returned to Bennett Design. Instead, I spent my mornings reviewing documents with Sterling Capital's legal team. The deeper we looked, the uglier everything became. Not just forged signatures. Entire contracts had been rewritten after clients signed them. Employee bonuses had disappeared. Retirement funds had been delayed. Someone had built a beautiful company on a rotten foundation. Late that afternoon, my phone buzzed. Sophia. I let it ring. Again and again. Finally, a message arrived. Please. 5 minutes. That's all I asked. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I agreed. Not because I wanted answers. Because I no longer feared hearing them. She chose a quiet riverside cafe. When I arrived, she was already there. No designer dress. No expensive makeup. Just a gray sweater and tired eyes. She stood as I approached. You came. You asked. We sat. Neither of us touched the coffee. Finally, she spoke. I owe you an apology. I waited. I kept telling myself I didn't know what Daniel was doing. She laughed bitterly. Maybe that's true. Her fingers tightened around the cup. But not knowing doesn't make me innocent. I remained silent. I stopped asking questions because everything looked successful. She looked directly at me. I saw your exhaustion. I saw you working until midnight. I saw clients asking for you. And a tear escaped despite her effort to stop it. I let everyone believe Daniel deserved the credit. She wiped it away immediately. I told myself we'd fix it later. There was always a later. There wasn't. I finally spoke. There never is. She nodded. I know. For several moments, only the sound of the river filled the silence. Then she asked the question she had probably rehearsed 100 times. Do you hate me? I thought carefully. Yesterday, I would have answered differently. Today, no. She looked surprised. I don't hate you. What do you feel? I searched for the right word. Distance. Her shoulders sank. I suppose that's worse. It is. Because hatred still ties two people together. Distance lets them become strangers. She smiled sadly. I understand. When she reached in her bag, I expected documents. Instead, she placed a small notebook on the table. My notebook. Every project idea, every sketch, every dream I'd written during those 3 years. I found it locked in your old office. She pushed it toward me. It always belonged to you. I placed my hand over the cover. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Finally, I stood. Goodbye, Sophia. She didn't stop me. She didn't ask for another chance. She simply watched me leave. Sometimes the deepest punishment isn't rejection. It's realizing the person you hurt no longer belongs to your future. As I stepped outside, my phone rang once more. It was Evelyn. There has been another development. What happened? The board voted, and Daniel has disappeared. I stopped walking. What do you mean? He emptied several offshore accounts before dawn. The wind carried the distant sound of thunder across the river. Evelyn's next words were calm. But that's not the important part. What is? He wasn't acting alone. The line went quiet for one heartbeat. We finally know who helped him. The name she spoke made the world around me seem to stop. My father. The world seemed to narrow into a single sound. My own heartbeat. My father. I repeated the words slowly, as if saying them differently might change their meaning. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. I'd rather show you than explain. An hour later, I sat inside Sterling Capital's legal conference room. The atmosphere was unusually quiet. No one rushed. No one whispered. A thick folder rested in front of me. Across the table sat Evelyn, her chief legal officer, and a forensic accountant. The accountant opened the folder. Mr. Hale. He slid several bank statements toward me. We traced the unauthorized transfers. Numbers covered every page. Transfers. Consulting fees. Shell companies. None of it made sense. Then I saw a familiar name. Richard Hale. My father. I stared at it. No. The accountant remained calm. The payments began 18 months ago. Another document. Board meeting attendance. My father had quietly accepted a position as an external business advisor. Nobody had ever mentioned it. Not to me. Not once. I looked at Evelyn. He never told me. I believe that was intentional. The legal officer added another file. This company. He pointed to a construction consulting firm. It exists only on paper. And it received nearly $4 million. I frowned. From Bennett Design? Yes. The company owner wasn't Daniel, nor Sophia. It was my father. The room fell silent. For years, I believe my parents favored Daniel because they genuinely loved him more. That pain had been simple. This was something else. This wasn't favoritism. This was profit. I left the conference room before anyone could stop me. The elevator ride felt endless. By the time I reached the parking lot, I could barely breathe. My phone rang. Mother. I answered. Where is he? She sounded frightened. Ooh, your father. I don't know. He left home this morning. He packed 2 suitcases. My grip tightened. What did he say? She hesitated. He said. Her voice cracked. That family loyalty only matters while it's useful. I closed my eyes. So that was it. Not love. Not disappointment. Convenience. I had spent years trying to earn affection that had already been sold. Mother began crying. I didn't know. For the first time, I believed her. You knew he preferred Daniel. Yes. But I never knew about the money. Her breathing became uneven. I thought he was just being unfair. So did I. Silence. Then she whispered, Can you come home? I looked toward the skyline. The old house. The place I'd once believed would always welcome me. I'll come. Not because I wanted reconciliation. Because I wanted the truth. The front door was already open when I arrived. The house felt strangely empty. Mother sat alone in the living room. She looked years older than she had 3 days ago. She stood the moment she saw me, then stopped. unsure whether she still had the right to hug her own son. I made tea. It was the same sentence she'd always used after arguments when I was little. My chest tightened. I'll have some. We sat across from each other. Neither of us touched our cups. Finally, she slid a small metal box across the table. I found this hidden in your father's study. Inside were letters, old photographs, contracts. One envelope had my name written on it. I recognized the handwriting. My grandfather's. He had died 7 years earlier. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Adrian, if you're reading this, then something has gone terribly wrong. I fear your father values inheritance more than integrity. The family business was never meant to belong to one son over another. It was meant to belong to the one who earned it. A second document followed. My grandfather's original will. I froze. According to it, everything had been divided equally between my father and me. Equal, not symbolic. Legally equal. Mother gasped. I've never seen that before. Neither had I. The final page carried another signature. A newer one. My father's. Below was a handwritten note. Superseded. Another will. A forged one. The version everyone knew. The one that left everything under my father's control. I slowly folded the papers. For years, I thought I had simply never been chosen. Now I realized I had been erased. That evening, rain began falling again. The same cold rain that had soaked me outside the engagement banquet. Only this time, I wasn't standing alone. Mother quietly packed a small suitcase. I'm leaving this house. I looked up. Are you sure? She nodded. I stayed because I believed marriage meant enduring hardship. A sad smile appeared. It doesn't mean helping someone become cruel. She zipped the suitcase shut. I should have protected you. I didn't answer immediately. There were too many years between us. Too many missed chances. Some wounds healed slowly. Some never completely did. But acknowledging them mattered. I can't change the past. She lowered her eyes. I know. I won't pretend nothing happened. I wouldn't ask you to. She gave a faint nod. That's enough. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was honesty. Sometimes that was the first real step. The next morning, Sterling Capital held an emergency board meeting. I attended only as an observer. Exactly where I wanted to be. Lawyers filled the room. Auditors presented evidence. Former executives avoided eye contact. Sophia sat quietly at the far end of the table. She looked exhausted. Daniel's chair remained empty. The chairman cleared his throat. We have received confirmation that Daniel Hard has left the country. Murmurs spread. The legal officer continued. However, he changed the screen. He left something behind. A video. The recording began. Daniel looked terrified. Not arrogant. Not confident. Terrified. If you're watching this. He swallowed hard. Then Richard Hale betrayed me. The room became perfectly still. Daniel continued. He promised he'd protect me if I signed everything. Another pause. He said Adrian would never fight back because he always wanted his family's approval. My hands slowly tightened beneath the table. Daniel laughed bitterly. He was right. He looked directly into the camera. But Richard lied. He moved the money without telling me. He planned to disappear alone. Sophia closed her eyes. The chairman muted the recording. No one spoke. Not because there was nothing to say. Because the truth had become impossible to deny. After the meeting, Evelyn found me standing beside the lobby windows. You were quiet. I've spent years talking. I watch people crossing the street below. I think listening tells me more. She stood beside me. The police issued international notices this morning. For my father and Daniel. I nodded once. I thought I'd feel satisfied. Do you? I consider the question. No. What do you feel? I watched the rain sliding down the glass. Free. Not because they were suffering. Because I no longer carried them. For years, I'd mistaken responsibility for love. I believed fixing everyone else would finally make them value me. Instead, it had only taught them to keep taking. Evelyn smiled. My grandmother would have liked that answer. I looked at her. What answer? Free. She looked toward the rain. She used to say, peace isn't winning against someone. It's finally stopping the fight they trapped you inside. Before I could respond, Evelyn's assistant hurried across the lobby. Miss Sterling. What is it? The assistant handed over a tablet. Evelyn's expression changed. Not fear, surprise. She looked at me. We've located Richard Hale. Where? He didn't run overseas. A brief pause. He came back. Why? Evelyn slowly turned the tablet toward me. Security footage filled the screen. My father stood alone outside my apartment building. He wasn't carrying luggage. He wasn't meeting lawyers. He wasn't hiding. He was waiting. And in his hands, he held another sealed envelope with my name written across the front. By the time I reached my apartment building, the rain had stopped. The streets still glistened beneath the afternoon sun, reflecting passing cars and hurried pedestrians. My father remained exactly where the security footage had shown him, standing beside the entrance, one hand gripping a worn brown envelope, the other buried inside his coat pocket. For the first time in years, he looked old, not powerful, not intimidating, simply tired. He noticed me immediately. Adrian. His voice carried none of its usual authority. I stopped several feet away. Neither of us moved closer. You've been waiting for 3 hours. I didn't ask you to. I know. Silence stretched between us. People passed without realizing they were walking between years of resentment. Finally, he held out the envelope. This belongs to you. I'll decide that after I see what's inside. A bitter smile crossed his face. Fair enough. I accepted it, but didn't open it immediately. Instead, I asked the question that had haunted me ever since Evelyn showed me the financial records. Why? He lowered his eyes. Which part? All of it. His shoulders sagged. When your grandfather chose you as an equal heir. He paused. I felt humiliated. I stared at him. You were his son. Exactly. His laugh was hollow. I believed everything should belong to me. So you stole it. I justified it. There's a difference. There isn't. For the first time in my life, my father admitted he was wrong without trying to excuse himself. It didn't erase anything, but it mattered. I kept telling myself I'd return everything later. He looked toward the street. But greed has a strange way of changing what later means. You sacrifice your own son. I did. You chose Daniel. I chose someone easier to control. The honesty hurt more than another lie would have. You were never weak enough. I looked at him quietly. No, I wasn't. His eyes reddened. I used that against you. He nodded toward the envelope. Everything I still legally own is being transferred back. I don't want stolen money. You'll decide what to do with it. I finally opened the envelope. Property deeds, investment certificates, the original inheritance documents, a handwritten confession, signed, dated, witnessed, enough evidence to destroy him in court. I looked up. You know this sends you to prison. I know, and you're giving to me anyway. I'm giving it to the person I should have trusted from the beginning. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he quietly asked, Can you forgive me? I answered honestly, I don't know. He nodded once. I expected that. There was disappointment in his eyes, but not surprise. He turned to leave. After only a few steps, he stopped. Without looking back, he said, I finally understand something. I waited. You never wanted my money. His voice trembled. You only wanted your father. He walked away before I could answer. I watched until he disappeared around the corner. Some distances couldn't be crossed in a single conversation. Some regrets arrived decades too late. The following morning, every major business network carried the same headline. Bennett designed fraud investigation expands. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded behind security barriers. Daniel had been detained after returning under legal advice, believing he could negotiate a lighter sentence. Instead, he found evidence waiting. Sophia arrived voluntarily. She wasn't under arrest. Not yet. She intended to testify. The cameras followed every step. No one noticed me entering through a side entrance beside Sterling Capital's legal team. That was exactly how I wanted it. The courtroom was almost completely full. Journalists, former employees, investors, even relatives who hadn't spoken to me until the scandal became public. I ignored every curious glance. The judge entered. The proceedings began. One witness after another described years of manipulated contracts and hidden financial records. Former employees admitted they had been pressured into altering internal reports. Accountants explained missing funds. Auditors reconstructed forged signatures. Every testimony added another crack to the illusion Daniel and my father had built. Then Sophia took the stand. She looked directly at the judge. I signed documents I didn't properly review. Her voice remained steady. I trusted the wrong people. A prosecutor asked, "Did Mr. Adrian Hale participate in the fraud?" She answered without hesitation. "No." "Did he benefit financially?" "No." "Who created most of Bennett Design's successful business proposals?" A long silence followed. Finally, she looked toward me, her eyes filled with regret. "Adrian." Nothing more, nothing less. One word, one truth she should have spoken years earlier. The courtroom remained completely silent. Later that afternoon, my father entered. Unlike Sophia, he didn't attempt to defend himself. He handed the judge his written confession. "I altered inheritance records. I established shell companies. I knowingly accepted fraudulent payments." The prosecutor looked surprised. "Are you pleading guilty?" "Yes." "No conditions?" "No." The judge frowned. "Why now?" My father slowly turned toward where I was sitting. "Because my son spent his entire life paying for my choices." His voice broke. "I won't make him pay any longer." No dramatic outburst followed. No emotional speech. Just the quiet weight of truth. Sometimes, the loudest apology was accepting consequences. Weeks later, the verdicts became public. Daniel received a substantial prison sentence for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. My father was also sentenced after his guilty plea, though the court considered his cooperation and voluntary confession. Sophia avoided prison by fully cooperating, returning illegal compensation, and assisting investigators. She lost her executive position. She lost her reputation. She accepted both without protest. The newspapers called it the collapse of Bennett Design. They were wrong. Companies don't collapse because one honest person leaves. They collapse because too many dishonest people stay. That evening, I met Evelyn on the rooftop garden of Sterling Tower. The city lights stretched endlessly below us. Neither of us mentioned the trial. Neither of us needed to. "It's over," she said quietly. I looked across the skyline. "No." She raised an eyebrow. "No. The fighting is over." I smiled faintly. My life is finally beginning. For the first time since the engagement banquet, the future didn't feel like something I had to survive. It felt like something I could choose. 6 months passed. Not once did I return to the old Bennett Design headquarters. The building still stood in the center of Harbor City, but it no longer represented betrayal. Sterling Capital had rebuilt it from the inside out. Corrupt executives were gone. Employees who had been ignored for years finally received overdue bonuses and restored retirement funds. Many of them sent thank you letters. None of them knew I had recommended that the compensation come before any expansion plans. I didn't need them to know. Some victories felt better when they remained quiet. My own life had become surprisingly ordinary. For the first time in years, my calendar wasn't filled with emergencies created by other people. Instead, my mornings began with coffee on my apartment balcony. Afternoons were spent consulting for Sterling Capital, not as an employee trapped by loyalty, but as an independent strategic advisor. Evelyn had insisted on one condition: "You'll never work yourself into exhaustion again." I had laughed. "You can't put that in a contract." I already did. She slid the agreement across the table. One clause made me stop. Mandatory annual leave. Maximum weekly working hours. Mental health support available upon request. I looked up. "You've written the least profitable employment contract I've ever seen." She smiled. "I've written the most sustainable one." For years, I had believed success required sacrificing myself. Now, someone was quietly teaching me the opposite. One afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Sophia. She waited in the building lobby. No appointment. No expensive clothes. Just a simple navy coat and a paper folder tucked beneath her arm. When I approached, she stood. "I won't keep you long." "I know." She handed me the folder. I've started over. Inside were architectural sketches, small residential homes, community libraries, affordable housing projects. Nothing luxurious. Everything practical. I've opened a nonprofit design studio. I looked through the pages carefully. They're good. She smiled for the first time in months. I learned something. What? I spent years designing buildings for wealthy clients. She looked toward the street outside. I never asked who actually needed them. She laughed softly. You used to. I remembered. Late-night conversations. Ideas about public parks. Community centers. Scholarship-funded housing. Dreams that had never survived board meetings. I finally understood why they mattered. I closed the folder. I'm glad. She looked at me carefully. I don't expect forgiveness. I know. I don't expect friendship. I know. She nodded. I only wanted you to know that losing everything forced me to become someone better. I believed her. Growth rarely looked dramatic. Sometimes it looked like accepting responsibility without asking for applause. She extended her hand. I shook it. Nothing more. Nothing less. Then she walked away. Watching her disappear into the afternoon crowd, I realized something. Closure didn't always come through reconciliation. Sometimes it arrived through acceptance. That evening, I visited my grandfather's grave. Fresh flowers already rested there. I didn't need to guess who had brought them. Mother. She appeared a few moments later, carrying another small bouquet. She smiled gently. I thought I'd find you here. You usually do. We stood together in silence. The wind moved softly through the surrounding trees. Finally, she spoke. I visited your father. I remained quiet. He's changed. I hope so. He asked about you. I looked down at the engraved stone. What did you tell him? The truth. She smiled sadly. I said healing takes longer than regret. Spring arrived with clear skies and warmer mornings. Harbor City seemed different. Perhaps the city hadn't changed. Perhaps I had. One Friday afternoon, Evelyn invited me to lunch. Not a board meeting. Not a business negotiation. Just lunch. The restaurant overlooked the harbor. Sailboats drifted across calm blue water. For a while we spoke about ordinary things. Books, travel, architecture, her grandmother, my grandfather. Neither conversation felt forced. Finally, she placed a small envelope beside my plate. I looked at it curiously. Another legal document? She laughed. No. I opened it. Inside was an old photograph. The same volunteer event from 10 years earlier. Only this version showed more of the background. A young woman stood several steps behind the elderly lady I'd helped. She looked frightened, relieved, grateful. I looked closer and slowly raised my eyes. Evelyn. She nodded. That was me. I stared at the picture again. I never noticed. You weren't looking at me. You were helping your grandmother. You were helping a stranger. Her smile carried warmth rather than sadness. I've never forgotten that. Neither of us spoke for several moments. Finally, I asked, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because gratitude can become obligation. And you didn't want that. She nodded. I wanted you to choose your own future. I looked out across the harbor. For so many years, every important relationship in my life had been built on expectation. Earn approval. Earn affection. Earn forgiveness. This one wasn't asking me to earn anything. It simply existed. Comfortably. Honestly. I smiled. I'd like to keep having lunch with you. She laughed. I was hoping you'd say that. Several weeks later, Sterling Capital officially announced a new initiative. The Adrian Hale Foundation. I protested immediately. Don't use my name. Evelyn folded her arms. Too late. I don't want recognition. You aren't getting recognition. She handed me the proposal. The foundation would provide grants for young architects, apprentices, and community development projects, especially for students who lack financial support. I read every page. Not once did it mention my business achievements. Instead, the opening sentence read, built on the belief that quiet integrity deserves opportunity. I looked at Evelyn. You wrote this. My grandmother would have. For a long time, I simply held the document. Years ago, I wanted my family to acknowledge my worth. Now, strangers would have opportunities because no one had acknowledged theirs. That felt infinitely more meaningful. As we left the conference room together, my phone vibrated. A message from Mother. Your father was released today. He didn't come home. He said he has one last thing to do before beginning again. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Some journeys had to be walked alone. And somehow, I felt ours were both nearing their final destination. Autumn returned to Harbor City almost exactly 1 year after the engagement banquet. The air was cooler. The streets looked the same. I didn't. The anniversary arrived without bitterness. I hadn't realized it until that morning. I simply noticed the date on my calendar, smiled faintly, and continued preparing for a meeting with the scholarship committee of the Adrian Hale Foundation. A year ago, I had walked away believing I had lost everything. Today, dozens of young architects sat outside the conference hall waiting for interviews that might change their futures. Life had a strange sense of balance. The first applicant entered. She nervously unfolded a portfolio. "I don't have perfect grades." "You don't need perfect grades." She blinked. I thought. I smiled. "We're looking for integrity, curiosity, and perseverance." By the end of the day, I had met 23 students. Some were talented. Some were inexperienced. All of them reminded me of a younger version of myself, working hard without anyone noticing. As I left the building, Evelyn caught up with me. "There's someone waiting downstairs." "A client." She shook her head. "No." Her expression softened. "I think it's time." My father stood beneath a maple tree across the street. He wore simple clothes. No expensive watch. No tailored suit. No trace of the executive who had once believed money could replace family. He looked healthier, older, quieter. He didn't approach until I crossed the street. "I heard about the scholarships." "Word travels." "It does." He smiled awkwardly. "I've been volunteering." I looked at him. "Where?" "A legal aid center." He laughed at himself. "They help elderly people understand inheritance documents." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I figured. He paused. "If I helped even one family avoid what I caused ours." His voice faded. "It would be a better use of my time." I believed him, not because of his words, because he wasn't asking for credit. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was simply doing the work. He reached into his jacket. For a brief moment, I remembered the envelope from months earlier. This time, however, he produced only a small wooden box. "I made this." "You?" He chuckled. "The prison workshop teaches woodworking." Inside rested my grandfather's old fountain pen, carefully restored. The cracked wood case had been replaced, the nib polished. I thought. He swallowed. Someone building futures should have something that once built ours. I gently lifted the pen. It felt familiar. Comforting. "I can't erase what happened." He looked directly into my eyes. I finally stopped trying. I closed the box. "No." He waited. "You can't." The silence stretched. Then I stepped forward, not to erase the past, not to pretend everything was fine, simply to hug my father, briefly, awkwardly, honestly. When we stepped apart, both of us understood what that hug meant. Not complete forgiveness. Hope. Sometimes hope was enough. That evening, I visited my grandfather's grave alone. I placed the restored fountain pen beside the flowers for a few moments before slipping it back into my pocket. "I think," I said quietly, "we're finally going to be okay." The wind answered with a gentle rustle of leaves. 1 month later, the Harbor City Architecture Awards hosted their annual gala. Ironically, it was held in the same ballroom where my humiliation had begun. The chandeliers still sparkled. The marble floors still reflected the lights. Even the stage remained unchanged. Only the people standing on it had changed. This time, I wasn't attending because someone invited me out of obligation. I had been asked to present the Foundation's Community Impact Award. As I walked toward the podium, memories briefly returned. The applause, the laughter, Daniel's smug smile, my family's silence. They no longer carried weight. They were simply memories. I looked across the audience. Mother smiled proudly. Sophia sat several rows back with members of her nonprofit studio. When our eyes met, she offered a quiet nod. I returned it. Evelyn stood near the stage, smiling with unmistakable pride, not because of what I had achieved, but because I had become someone who no longer measured his worth through other people's approval. I adjusted the microphone. I was once told that success belongs to the person everyone chooses. The audience listened quietly. I believed that for a long time. I paused. I was wrong. A gentle silence filled the hall. The strongest foundations aren't built on popularity. They're built on character. And character usually grows where no one is watching. I announced the scholarship recipients. Young architects walked onto the stage with nervous smiles and hopeful eyes. Their applause felt different. It wasn't celebrating wealth. It was celebrating possibility. When the ceremony ended, Evelyn joined me near the ballroom entrance. How does it feel? I looked around one last time. The room that had once witnessed my greatest humiliation now witnessed something entirely different. Peace. It feels. I smiled. Finished. She laughed softly. I was hoping you'd say that. Together we stepped outside. The night sky stretched above Harbor City, clear and full of stars. The future no longer felt like revenge. It no longer felt like proving anyone wrong. It simply felt like home. And as we walked forward, without looking back, I finally understood the lesson hidden beneath every loss I had endured. The people who chose the wrong groom hadn't truly defeated me. They had only revealed who they were. The life I built afterward revealed who I was.